And with Rukia Cornelius, and she's from Oxfam, the Women's Economic Power Lead at Oxfam South Africa. Now, speaking of Diabo Seto, whom we'll be crossing to in Davos, Oxfam has, of course, stated their concern around economic equality and saying that it is out of control. Now, Oxfam has released the report that we are discussing right now ahead of the World Economic Forum that's currently taking place in Davos in Switzerland. In 2019, just to repeat this, the world's billionaires, only 2,153 people, all of whom are men, had more wealth than 4.6 billion of the poorest people in this world. Now, at the top of the global economy are people, mainly men, whose wealth and power seems to grow over time, regardless of whether the value they add to society in any way matches the wealth that they accumulate. So who exactly are these people, and why is this allowed, Rukia?
Why is this allowed? I think it's allowed because our economy is set up as sexist. We don't have alternatives that begins to recognize equality between men and women. It's allowed because our private sector and our government, that's actually where the buck stops, isn't it? Our governance and our government systems that should be able to create environments that are transparent, accountable, that recognizes the needs of all of its people. And that's, I think, why it's allowed. Wealthy people in mass wealth, because they can elicit financial flows from developing countries to developed countries or offshore accounts is allowed because they're allowed to do it because our systems and our mechanisms that we have in place are not robust enough or not implemented in ways that it should be to counter that. And then our economic systems are neoliberal. And so it's not set up for the working poor or the people living in poverty. It's set up to amass more wealth. And that's a huge crisis for us around the world. It is a world in crisis. It is a South Africa in crisis. Yesterday we heard our president say after the ANC-NEC meeting, in one sentence he said, one of the resolutions is they are committing to women's economic empowerment. Lots of dots. What would that look like? What would that look like for women? What would that look like for the working poor and the impoverished in South Africa? And I think that there are many solutions and ways that we can counter the deep levels of inequality and the deep levels of poverty and the way that our countries around the world, and so we're talking from Vietnam to Bolivia to India to South Africa to across the continent, our Africa region, there are many different ways that we can counter these, and that is, it starts with our government, and it starts with systems and austerity measures that doesn't disenfranchise, and public expenditure budgets that aren't decreased but increased.
But the finance minister speaks of a decrease.
Yes,
in
absolutely.
that spend.
And that's the challenge, 5 to 7%. And that decrease is going to come is for public expenditure, as you said, Sakina, and that's a problem for us. And so why are we cutting there when one of the statistics have shown to us as well that if we were to tax additional tax of just 0.5%, if we were to tax the wealthy, like the 1% that in mass wealth and that hold the wealth of the world, if we were to tax them just 0.5% extra, then we would be able to create 117 million jobs. 117 million jobs, right? And those are hopefully well-paid jobs with labor rights recognized and valued. And then we go further and we say, how else are we able to end this deep entrenched inequality? Because it is possible. It is possible to do that. In addition to taxing the wealth, we're able to create systems that are robust that says, if we know that 12.5 billion hours of women's work amounts to X trillion, 10.8 trillion billions of dollars, then how do we begin to spend that money? We need to begin to spend it on health, on education. We need to begin to spend it on transport systems, healthcare facilities, informal traders that are women that are having to keep their babies with them. Yesterday we heard from the Informal Traders Union or organizers, and they were, Sister Lulama was talking about how they have to carry their babies with them to their informal trader work and have the children grow up in tomato boxes. What stops our state from creating childcare facilities for informal traders who contribute to the economy. And so I do think it's about thinking about alternatives, thinking about lives of equality and dignity. And it's possible. It's possible in a country like South Africa if we have the will to do it.
And that is the million-dollar ask, isn't it? Do we have the will? And it's going to be interesting to see what sort of deliberations take place around this in Davos. But we're going to have to leave this one here for now. Thank you to Rukia Cornelius, Women's Economic Power Lead at Oxfam South Africa. And Oxfam, of course, releasing that inequality report for 2020, and it states that the world's 2,153 people control more money than the poorest 4.6 billion people combined in 2019. Let's take a break.